and the prophets and all of those who believe in serving. Panel is meant to discuss the past, but I'm an integrationist, so you can call me postmodernist in this approach probably, but I would like our panelists to answer this one question and think about imagining yourself in the years that you were here as a student, sitting in the audience. Imagine giving advice to yourself, attending this event. What would you tell yourself? What was missing within your education when you were here? How you explored finding meaning when you left here? And what are you most grateful for your time from then and now? What was missing? How you explored after? And what are you most grateful from then and now? Talk to yourself out there. I'll start with Dr. Nisa Muhammad.
Assalamu alaikum. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. I think my answers, do you want me to answer each question or just one by one?
However you feel.
However I feel. Let the spirit move me. I think the advice that I would give to myself sitting in the audience is that keep up with Joshua. He'll be a good friend for a long time. So I met Joshua, we had classes together, but we would ride the bus here. We would meet at Union Station and we would ride a Greyhound bus here from DC. Lauren is shaking her head like, no, what? No, for real. We transferred buses in New York and we caught another bus. And I didn't really know him before we met at the bus station. And then sometimes we would walk from the Hartford bus station here. He would carry my bag. I mean, I was like, this is a good brother right here. You know, and these are the kinds of friends and people that I met here at Hartford. Hartford allowed me to find myself here as a black woman, a black Muslim woman, as a chaplain. Hartford gave me the options and the opportunities to do that. I want to thank Dr. Mosher. Her class was the first class that I took, and it was just so revelatory to hear the things that she said as not being a Muslim, but to hear her talk about Islam. And it was just so very comforting, and it let me see that, you know what, this is a great place to be. Dr. Madsen talked about safety and being welcomed and feeling accepted, and I felt all of those things here at Hartford. And it gave me a model upon which to take to Howard University, where I work with students of all faiths as the Assistant Dean for Religious Life, to also help them to feel safe, to feel welcomed, and to feel accepted. What was missing? I think one of the things that I wish that I had more of was learning how to work with marginalized populations. So I'm at Howard University, where everything black is celebrated. It's a center for black excellence. But what I found was that we had black Muslim students coming to Howard from surrounding universities who were not feeling safe, were not feeling welcomed, or were not feeling accepted. And so I was confronted with this issue of what's going on with black Muslims at other universities. What are their issues? What are their problems? What are their challenges? And in some universities, a mass exodus from the MSA to now start their own organizations. And so I think that that's one of the classes that I think would be really helpful, is working with marginalized populations. How do you work with them? How do you provide pastoral care for them in a way that meets their needs? And I'm going to shout out to Omer Bajwa, who is such a great example of that. You know, the black Muslim students at Yale were able to thrive, they were able to be in leadership positions, but he still saw a need for them to have their own organization. And he helped them to create the Black Muslims at Yale, which is just so phenomenal, to have a chaplain that really sees you. Not just sees you as a stereotype of what a Muslim should be, but really sees you as who you are as a black Muslim. And he started that group, and the students have written, and they love it. They're just so excited that you're seen and you're heard and you're believed. And let me see, what am I most grateful for? I'm just so grateful for Hartford, period. As I said, I was able to find myself here. I was able to meet these amazing people. Jay found me in a winter intensive class, asked me to be involved with AMC, the Association of Muslim Chaplains, and it's just been on and popping ever since. So I am just so thankful for all of that. Let me see, exploring the meaning. Hartford really pushes you in terms of your research to explore what you're interested in. They don't give you cookie cutter things upon which to do, but really to explore and find out who you are. Dr. Matson talked about being familiar with the community, being familiar with the vernacular of that community and know who they are. At Howard University, they welcomed me with such open arms because I know that community. I'm a black Muslim. I know what it means to be black. I know what it means to be a black woman. I know I'm a convert, so I knew what it meant to be a black Christian for a time. So it's an opportunity to be in a space that gives meaning to who you are and gives meaning to your work. So I just want to thank Hartford just for that opportunity, and this is just an amazing place. And for everybody listening, come to Hartford, you will love it. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Good morning. Thank you so much to Dr. Bilal and the organizers for convening us. Thank you to Dr. Matson for being here, for being our teacher. Thank you to my fellow panelists and to you, to the audience. To just jump into the question, and I may not be able to answer all three of them, but I'll try to tie together two thoughts here. One is the thing that was referenced in the previous session, which is that when I was invited by Dr. Bilal to reflect on this panel and what I was going to talk about, really what stuck out to me was this idea of scholar-practitioner, was the access and the ability to sit with and learn from and see our teachers modeling their teachings, right? With Dr. Matson and her leadership on campus, in the Connecticut Muslim community, and then at a national and level beyond, which I thought was invaluable. And the exposure we got, we took classes and we did retreats with Imam Majid, with really national figures that were deeply embedded in their communities and brought their work to the classroom, and then really pushed us in our own ways, right? In the classroom and outside of the classroom. Sheikh Noor, Sheikh Abdullah, just the exposure that I got here was invaluable. That's the thing that I left 15 years ago that I reflect back on. And the second thing was really the relationships. And what my perspective is on chaplaincy, it's ultimately all about relationships. It's about nurturing, building, empowering, and sustaining human relationships. And the cohort that I was with Dr. Bilal, I was with our beloved dear friend and teacher, Imam Suhaib Allah Yarhamu, with Chaplain Marwa. And I think we took classes together, and then we went out to eat and hung out. And then even after we finished and went to our respective communities to serve, those bonds of friendship, professional collegiality, but really just from my perspective, that brotherhood and sisterhood. 15 years later, these are friends for life, right? And that's what Hartford allowed me in the classroom, outside of the classroom, to nurture those. And those are the things that when you've got the rough days and you don't have the answers, you need to talk to a colleague. You need to talk to someone that knows, they know what you're talking about, right? Not to take away from the pastoral spiritual support that our families give us, but at some level there is a professional wavelength that we're on. And then I would say that was really invaluable. The last thing that I'll sort of throw out there that I think the seminary allowed me to explore here and beyond is, I came from a graduate program. I came from a PhD program, and I shifted gears and I came here. As Dr. Matson alluded to, graduate training is a particular kind of training, and this is a different kind of training. And when I came here, I was in my head, right? I was like, don't mess up. You can't make a mistake. This is not that, because mistakes are never rewarded. They are actually amplified, and you are cut down in the academy for a variety of reasons. And then when I came here, I had that mindset, and I think what this place gave me, to use the term, the grace and the space to really know that you don't have all the answers. You're never going to get it all right. You're human, and you learn along the way. And then even after I finished and I went into my position at Yale, I look back there's cringy moments, right? I just look back and I'm like, oh, I can't believe I said this or I did this. But the friends, the teachers, to pick up the phone and to call and to be like, help me think through this. Was this the best thing to do? And then, people that love you are like, no, actually, you fumbled on that, on that play. But there's a recovery, right? And that, I think, is what is invaluable that the seminary experience gave me. So thank you.
Bismillah. What was missing, what we explored after, and what we're grateful for? Oh, beautiful. I think the piece of advice I would give myself if I were so blessed to be a student in the program today again, is maybe one that is getting more and more elusive and difficult to obtain, is that would be to be a full-time student. I was working I was blessed to have a work study through the second half of my studies, but through the first part I had to work full-time, and to be working and to be a student, there were so many learning opportunities I didn't have the blessing of partaking in as a result. It is also a tremendous privilege and luxury to be a full-time student, and if I'm not mistaken, the tuition is now double per course what it was when I was here. And it robs the student of the chance to sort of fully immerse in the studies. You know, the library here, I mean, subhanAllah, the library is amazing. There's so many books down there. And when you don't have the time and the freedom to dive deeply into those, you lose out. And so I think my advice for the students is really more about, for the institution, enroll us and your alumni in how we can do the fundraising to allow students to be fully present as students. Well, also, I mean, at the same time, those who are already doing the chaplaincy work, what a gift to have them in the classroom as well. So if your work is chaplaincy, don't leave it. If your work can be left, and if the institution can enable you to do that, to be fully present. What have I explored after? Oh my goodness, so much. I think that a lot of what I've spent time exploring, I'm thrilled to see now incorporated into the learning here. A lot of my learning, my independent learning, has been about trauma and understanding how trauma informs so much of how people exist in the world and what experiences they've had. The work of the Hurma Project, may God reward you, Dr. Mattson. It is such a gift to the community at large, and to chaplains especially, to have that work happening. I'm so grateful to see a trauma counseling class at Hartford now. I think I took the scenic route through my studies. I think I was blessed to have a full 7 or 8 years before I finished both my MA and GC, which one of the blessings was that I got to know so many more students. I'm sad, we're now kind of into cohorts that I don't know. But that taking time was really a gift. But I've seen the increase in the sort of clinical skill set that is so valuable. But the beautiful thing about the way the clinical skill set is happening here, it is that it is so deeply faith informed, right? As Muslims, we can't and we shouldn't try to pull those apart, because they are deeply connected. And so it's beautiful to see that happening. And I think the other thing that there's been some references to the Association of Muslim Chaplains. That's been a huge area, I think, of exploration, among other things, for me. I have a bias. When there's a Muslim chaplain who doesn't choose to join the Association of Muslim Chaplains, I will confess, I don't know if judgment's the right word. I know we aim for non-judgmental presence. But I get a little bit apprehensive. Shura is a core part of our tradition. You know, even our beloved Prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, like, he held shura with his wives. He held shura with his friends. Like, he had, he was blessed to have shura with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But in the absence of that, for all of us to seek that out from each other. And I think within AMC, to have the peer support, but also trying to build the spaces to be able to go and say, this is what I'm doing, or this is what I'm struggling with. Where are you all, and am I straying off Sirat al-Mustaqim, that we pull each other back on? And so that's been a big, trying to build that so that we continue the blessed relationships we had here and expand. I really appreciate what Dr. Mattson said. To be able to learn from and with colleagues from BAN and TISA and AIC and inshallah soon BIS, we have different ways of doing things, and it's so exciting. I love that exchange. I think the thing that I am most grateful, there's so many things I'm really grateful for, but the opportunity that being together, I am so grateful for online courses allowing a greater diversity of people to come and to participate. As much as being a full-time student is a blessing, I also realize that we have moms of little children who have so much to offer, and we have people with disabilities who can't up and move and travel, and people who are rooted in their community leadership that can't come and live here. And yet the intensive model, I think, allows still to maintain some of that. The morning we used to go for, I hope this is still happening, inshallah, post-Fajr hikes up Talcott Mountain, and the conversations that we would have at the coffee house, when faculty would host us for dinners. So much of my learning happened in those conversations where we would really challenge each other and have conversations that maybe there wasn't the space or the time to have in the classroom. It happened in those spaces. And so I think that one of the things I'm most grateful for is that opportunity to learn. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing. Dr. Nisa Muhammad, being at Howard, can you tell us how your reach institutionally is touching the other HBCUs? How is Hampton doing? How is Spelman doing? Tell us a bit about your reach there.
So that's a very good question. So Howard University is the only HBCU that has a Muslim in the chaplaincy department. None of the other HBCUs have anyone in there. So generally, most of the Muslim students at the other HBCUs are always emailing me, we don't have a prayer space. How can we find a prayer space? They gave us a prayer space on Tuesdays and Thursdays from 4 to 5. How do we negotiate, right? How do we negotiate this? And so what we have done at Howard, previously we have hosted a HBCU MSA conference, where the Muslim students from the other HBCUs would come to Howard for a yearly conference. And it was really just an opportunity for gathering and to be among other Muslim students to, reflect, complain, vent, whatever, but also just to be among other students who look like you and who act like you, and to develop some kind of camaraderie. So we were very, very, very happy to do that. What was kind of interesting, the group that was sponsoring this before I got to Howard was very specific about it was just for HBCU MSA students. But we started getting requests from Black Muslims from other schools. Can we come? And they were like, no, you don't go to HBCU. But I was like, wait a minute. It's not their fault. They're feeling marginalized at their school. Why are we going to now marginalize them? Also, so we opened it up to students from other schools. And that just gave an influx of other Black Muslim students to come. And after coming to this conference, the students at NYU started the Black Muslim Initiative, because they were empowered to see what can happen when you do something for yourself. So we've been I work with the students at Morgan, I work with the students at Hampton, as you mentioned, because they don't have anybody else. And so I'm working, whoever emails me and says we're having this problem, I work with them, because it's a great need, especially for Black Muslims, to have someone that speaks the language, someone who's an administrator, someone who can say A, B, C, and D. A major concern is Muslim students who are forced to go to convocation, which is mandatory, but it has a Christian perspective. Like, they have to go to these events. They're like, I'm Muslim, I don't want to go, but they're forced to go. So how do we work with the administration to help them negotiate this? Is there something else they can do? What else can happen? Another thing is working with Muslim graduate students at Howard University, for example. We have a Saudi club. We also have Muslims at the medical school, all of the professional schools. Well, the Muslim students at the medical school wanted a prayer space. They talked to the dean, there's no space available. They contacted me and I was like, what? They can't find a place for you to pray? They're like, they told us no. I said, okay, that's fine. I'll talk to my dean. My dean, Dean Bernard Richardson, who taught here for a while, loves Muslims and loves people who pray. So if you say you want to pray somewhere, okay, I got this. I talked to him about it. He contacted the dean of the medical school, and they found a place for them to pray. And so it's just a matter of being able to negotiate and to facilitate ease for students, to be able to make, they're only in college for 4 years, sometimes 5, but to be able to help them have it be as successful and as prosperous and as emotionally satisfying as possible. The Black Muslims don't want to have to fight during college with other Muslims about this program, or can you have one Black imam do Juma throughout the school year when you've had none for 3 years. They don't want to have to fight that fight. They said, you know what, let's just have our own thing. They don't want to have to go into an MSA meeting and hear students start to speak Urdu or Arabic as soon as they walk in the room. They don't want to have to experience that, so they leave. And they are now empowered, and there's in some places a mass exodus of Black Muslim students from the MSA because they want to enjoy their 4 years at college as Muslims. And I just want to thank, as I said, Chaplain Omar, again, for making it easy for students to be who they are, to be and to enjoy being who they are, and to have programming and activities that helps them to be able to do that. So I work with HBCUs to allow them to be able to do that. North Carolina Central is another campus that I work with because it's just necessary, and that's what we're taught. You know, help students be who they are and help them on their journey, be a companion on their journey wherever they're going.
Well, I got a problem with you. I got to share it with you. A student of ours at this liberal arts college that I work with, I met him yesterday. He came back from Howard a whole year. He spent an hour at primarily white institution where I work. In their junior years, our institution will pay them to go anywhere they want to be. And he wanted to go to Howard. It's Abu Bakr. Abu Bakr, I saw him last night. And I was like, you know, welcome back. He was like, no, my heart is still in Howard.
Really, you know, and it's like that for all the exchange students that come. He is not a rarity because he's a biology major. He told me he's the only Black biology major at the school. There are hundreds of Black biology majors at Howard University. It's a center for Black excellence. And so he was exposed to the brilliance of science from a Black perspective. I mean, he was able to, and I know he didn't want to go back. I know he's like,
coming down for homecoming.
He's coming back for home. Well, you know what? The Muslim students are planning a whole week of activities. We already have Imam Siraj Wahaj as our Juma speaker. I mean, because it's a center of Black excellence, not just Black excellence if you're a Christian, but it's the center of Black excellence regardless of what you are. We have a small Jewish population. You know, we help to celebrate them as well, and it's an opportunity to be who you are and not have to try to fit in a cookie cutter, you know, scheme of what other people think you should be. And so tell him we will welcome him back. We're so very happy to have him.
Mr. Omer Bajwa, Chaplain Omar, talk to me about, listen, there's certain places around this nation. I was blessed to be land at Williams with a chaplain to the college, Rick Spalding, who was in his last 5 years, but had done an amazing job planting the field. Talk to me about, you landed at another place with an amazing chaplain there who done some amazing work. Talk to me about how that is, leaving here, going there, and having a mentor like that, Christian.
Oh, thank you for the questions, and thank you, Dr. Nisa, for the kind words. May Allah make me worthy of them, inshallah. It's a great question, and I'll just jump into it in the interest of time. So I was hired by Chaplain Sharon Kugler, who is historic in many ways. She's the first female chaplain ever in the history of Yale, which is a ridiculously old institution. And also she's the first Catholic chaplain ever hired by a historically Protestant institution as well. So she's a trailblazer, and she hired me and created the position there. So I was honored to be the first full-time Muslim chaplain at Yale. But to answer your question, what really I have found, and this is my 15th year serving with her, under her supervision and leadership, is that really I think the mindset is setting up your staff for success. right? That she always made herself available as a mentor and said, come and talk to me, and I may not have the answers all the time, but we will help think through this together, right? And I think even in my first year, I was in a really I felt like I was in a very awkward position between the students, between different groups of students and how to navigate it. And she said, just come into my office and we'll think through it, we'll talk through it, and gave me a really invaluable piece of advice, which is that just be authentic and be yourself. Right at that, and she's like, I think we actually disagreed on a certain point, but I never felt lesser because of that. She's like, I want you, if this is is this what you feel is authentic on how to navigate this particular issue, then you have to be that you should do that, right? Don't change that on account. And then as I've grown and learned, right, to create that space for mistakes, for failures, for and whatnot. So I think what I mean to say to answer the question is, one of the greatest things you can ever hope for in a supervisor is someone that takes the responsibility of mentorship very seriously and makes themselves available, both in the office, but as was alluded to, in fact, so much of the learning takes place outside of the office, right, in those moments that you share. So.
If you haven't been to the Yale Office of Chaplain, they have a good whole thing of some sweet, you have an ice cream bar. Yeah. It's like, that's game changer. You just come there to get some ice cream any time. So anyway, y'all know I'm from New Haven, right? I spent a lot of time in his office. Chaplain Jaye, I have a question for you. You were very, like you said, you've transversed many different years here. Also in the development of the Association of Muslim Chaplains. Tell me a little bit more about why the professionalization of having an outside association is very, very important. A little bit more, and where is it now? I remember being in Dr. Matson's class with Abdullah working in Tepeli, and our beloved, Asuaib, and Dr. Madison, we were like, there's no association. We were crying the blues about nothing. There's nothing that ISNA for us. You're like, well, create it then. Be innovative and you create it then. And that's what Suhaib and Abdullah Atabali and I did. We just created the Muslim Chaplain Association, which became this Association Muslim. So it started here. And to see it evolve and emerge, you've had a bird's eye view. Talk to us a little bit about seeing that grow and develop and why it's important.
For those of you who don't know, AMC is about to, inshallah, hire our first staff member. So exciting. Alhamdulillah. I was a student here when this sort of rebirth of AMC was occurring. And there was a tremendous amount. I was actually not in the chaplaincy program when I started here. I came just to really sort of do more in the Islamic Studies graduate certificate, and then loved it and stuck around the long haul. And there was a lot of recruitment to everybody who was interested in supporting the development of Islamic chaplaincy, which I think is an area we as an association, and I should say, I'm speaking in an individual capacity here, I'm not on behalf of AMC, but I think it is something that we as an association need to actually come back to sort of re-engaging that support and enthusiasm. But for the past number of years, we've really honed in a little bit more on focusing on the profession of chaplaincy. And I think it's important to name that a profession is actually defined as a field of work that has established competencies, a recognized training path, a code of ethics or conduct, and a professional association to uphold all of those. And so AMC as a professional association has some very specific roles to play. And for for AMC it sort of manifests as how do we support Muslim chaplains, and how do we help the field of Islamic chaplaincy grow. And I'm excited to see both of those things happening. AMC now has over 230 members. And there's a beautiful diversity to that membership. There was talk earlier about sort of all of these different approaches to practicing Islam, and it's really beautiful to see our membership in conversation with each other as issues come up, where they actually hold very different personal approaches to practice, trying to figure out how we navigate this field together in a way that serves the needs of our institutions and our communities, while staying true to our heart. I think that as we move forward, one of the things that we need to sort of, I pray that we will kind of loop and see, is that as a professional association, AMC has opted to keep a wide tent. Many of the people who have been doing this work longest did not have the benefit of training. I hear oftentimes Muslim chaplains saying this is a very new field, and it breaks my heart every time, because this is not a new field. We've had Muslim chaplains back to well documented for the 1970s, also I think in the 1960s. We didn't have as much of an opportunity to document their learning. AMC is currently doing a research project, an oral history project, interviewing pioneers in the field. I'm really excited to see that bring forward more learning opportunities about our history. But in keeping that tent wide to ensure that we can have everybody around the table, there's an interesting phenomenon where we have people who are now currently being hired by institutions that actually don't have any chaplaincy training. It's very hard to increase the depth of conversation when you're sitting around a table with people, or a Zoom, as is really the case more often, who have very different understandings of what chaplaincy is. And I think about how when students come to a place like Hartford, I'm working on saying hi you. It still hurts, Emma. I apologize. They tend, they were the top of their Sunday school, mashallah. Like they were leaders in their community. They had, they thought they knew how Islam worked and what Islam was. And suddenly they're in a classroom with Muslims who really challenge them. And they come in oftentimes thinking, may God reward all of you university chaplains who are actually the face of chaplaincy in so many ways. The work that those of us who are in the hospital do is very rarely seen, or those who are in corrections even less so, and elsewhere. And so they come in with sort of an idea of what they think chaplaincy is, and you see this tremendous evolution over the course of their studies. So then in AMC, we have people who haven't had those conversations before. And so it's been difficult, I think, to kind of go to this next level of depth, because we continue to have institutions hiring people who haven't had any of that. I'm excited to see the ways that longtime members are starting to do things like take clinical pastoral education or enroll in a program. Shout out to the Islamic Seminary of America that recently worked with AMC to establish a full scholarship for an existing AMC member. I'd love to see you guys do that too. So we have these people who have been doing this work. How do we give them the benefit of the education? It benefits the institution. And I'd like to see us sort of get to a point where people going into the field have that or are in process, so that we can go to another level of depth. And I think I could go on about this all day, but I will. The one other thing I'll say is that it's the public discourse is really important to where chaplains are involved in helping to kind of help the community to understand the work that we do instead of the work that they think that we do, to inform the way chaplaincy programs are now developing.
Thank you for that.
Can I just say one more thing? President Joshua Salam is in the back. So, former president here. We got some VPs in the room, some other people. So please ask for their thoughts too, because I'm only one part of the picture.
I like that the attributes of God are Jalal and Jamal, is rigor and beauty. So I'm going to bring up some little rigor here, if you don't mind. Dr. Madsen talked about the public health kind of a campaign. I want each of us to just talk a little bit about how important it is when there's national upheaval, Black Lives, Roe versus Wade, January 6th, the rise of white nationalism. How important is the advocacy of a chaplain, or what your roles are within the institutions that you serve at speaking to those, responding to those, in the moment as a caregiver for the institutions that you serve?
So Howard University has a history of protest and struggle and confronting, speaking power to people. And so it's just a natural thing for us. Our students took over the administration building. And so one of the things that my office did was they do chapel every Sunday. They had chapel in the administration building for the students who were protesting. Our students are always involved with Black Lives Matter movement. After the George Floyd murder, we had, sessions there. Our students were very traumatized by that. And so one of the things that our students did, our students were involved in a protest in DC, and so they were, how do we be safe? How do I do this safely? And so they found apps to use, Signal, they found burner phone numbers to call, and I was like the designated, if something happens, call me, and I will call your parents, because anything can happen in these situations. And so I was just very thankful that they saw me as a trusted source to be able to work with them on this, so that they knew if anything happened, they didn't really want to call their parents, but if anything happens, they could call me.